This is Eric Hillard Nelson, the youngest member of one of the best known and best loved families in America during the late 50s and early 60s. There's not much that I can say about the Nelsons, Ricky, David, Ozzie, and Harriet, that most Americans don't already know. Each week we watch David and Ricky grow up before our eyes. And thanks to Ozzie, the head of the family, the weekly television show mimicked real-life situations of the Nelsons. They even played as themselves. They were not perfect, but they were close. You could tell that they had a genuine love and concern for each other. Now, I believe that if you're brought up in a close-knit family like the Nelsons, you may not always achieve the same for yourself because of life's circumstances. But you know what a close family is, and I believe that that desire to have the same thing for yourself and your family will always be there. In December 1985, Ricky Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band was on tour in Florida. They had just finished a show in Orlando on the 27th. Their next engagement was to be at a New Year's Eve party at the Park Suite Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Instead of flying to California for a short time and then having to fly back to Texas, Ricky remembered that he had an old friend in Guntersville, Alabama, Pat Upton, who had actually toured with the Nelson as a member of the Stone Canyon Band for almost 4 years. Upton himself at one time had a hit record called "I'll Love You More Today Than Yesterday." Upton had left the road and opened a lounge called PJ's Alley in his hometown of Guntersville. Now, PJ's here was later converted to a pizza parlor. Normally, PJ's Alley could never afford such an expensive performer as Ricky Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band. But this time, Nelson agreed to perform only for the door fees. He did it for 2 reasons. One for convenience and the other to help an old friend. On Saturday evening, the 28th of December, the white with black and gold trim DC-3 made a near-perfect landing at the small Guntersville Airport. That night, Ricky and his band played to a packed house. People were turned away at the door, and a special permit was granted to allow for overcrowding. The band stayed at the Holiday Inn on Guntersville Lake. Now, Ricky and his fiancée, Helen Blair, stayed in room 106. Now, the hotel was later changed to a Best Western, but now it's called the Wyndham Garden Lake Hotel. The hotel, by the way, is very gracious to Nelson's fans even today, placing a plaque on door 106 and memorabilia of Ricky in the lobby of the hotel. Now, on Monday, Ricky and Helen visited their friend, Pat Upton, at his home. And because they had had such a demand from the fans to see Ricky's performance, Nelson agreed to do another show Monday night, December the 30th. The performance Monday night was, as expected, completely sold out. However, the show was delayed from a burnt-out amplifier. They were shocked to find a dead python snake in it. Yep, a dead python. Ricky stated that the python actually belonged to his kids and that it most likely crawled into the amplifier during the Christmas holidays. And then it probably frozen to death in the unheated baggage compartment of the DC-3. After the performance that night, Ricky's fans wouldn't let him get off the stage. He was recalled back twice to take bows. Ironically, the last public song that Ricky Nelson sang was a Buddy Holly song. Rave on. And his last words to the crowd that night was, "Rave on for me." The next day, on New Year's Eve, December the 31st, 1985, the group was scheduled to take off from the small Guntersville Airport at 10 a.m. that morning. But the pilot, Ken Ferguson, delayed the takeoff because of fog and 500-foot cloud cover. Also, one of the engines failed to start. Now, the crew had had trouble with the engine starting before they left Orlando. There had been mechanical problems with the plane in the past. It had once belonged to Jerry Lee Lewis. The group hung around the airport until the problem was corrected. Now, this is a picture of the plane being inspected by Dick Lust, manager of the Guntersville Airport. Now, at 2 p.m. that afternoon, the vintage DC-3 took off for the 450-mile flight to Love Field in Dallas. 3 hours into the flight, around 35 miles west of Texarkana, the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport received a distress call from the DC-3, tail number N71Y. There is smoke filling the cockpit and the cabin. Where's the nearest airport? The reply was Texarkana, 20 miles away. We can't make it. We're now on fire. Now, if you take Highway 30 south of Texarkana to Highway 82 west to DeKalb, Texas, on the east side of DeKalb, you'll see the Williams House Museum. There they house a portion of the tail section of Ricky Nelson's plane. They have a lot of helpful information about the crash site. They're very kind people, and they'll remind you also that DeKalb is also the burial and birthplace of Bonanza's Dan Blocker, Horace Cartwright. For example, now this is Dan Blocker's high chair that they have there, and it's said that he was so big that he stumped out the bottom of it, according to his mother. They can also help you locate the plane crash site. Now in DeKalb, off Highway 80, we go east on Texas Farm Road 1840. Then south on Texas 990 for about a half a mile to the crash site in a cow pasture on the right. The DC-3 tried to land on this road that we're on, but veered off for fear of hitting automobiles. On their last pass, they flew across this highway coming from the left and landed in the pasture on the right, leaving a trail of gas and fire falling from the plane on the ground. They were only 2 miles from a short landing field. They stated, "We can't make it." At 5:15 p.m. on December 31st, 1985, DC-3, tail number N711Y, crashed into the line of trees ahead of us. The plane hit the ground and bounced twice, leaving burnt spots in the fields, before coming to rest in the tree line. Although it was controlled landing, the fire was so hot it melted the metal structure of the plane. According to the pilot Ken Ferguson, age 40, and co-pilot Brad Rank, age 34, the plane was intact when it landed. The tremendous heat from the fire is what destroyed the plane. By the time the plane came to a complete stop, the cabin and the cockpit was engulfed in flames. Now this is the rear part of the fuselage that survived the fire. It is the section right under the tail fin. The two pilots escaped through the emergency cockpit windows. They received second and third degree burns. They had to drop 15 feet to the ground out the windows. The two survivors were rushed to the St. Michael's Hospital in Texarkana, both in critical condition. Ricky Nelson, age 45, his fiancée Helen Blair, 27, along with Patrick Woodward, age 35, the bass player, who actually had a 6-month-old son at home waiting on him, and also the drummer, Ricky Enfield, had celebrated his 23rd birthday just one day before his death. Bobby Neal, 38, lead guitarist. Clark Russell, 35, sound man and road manager. And Andy Chapin, 30, the pianist and keyboardist. They were all found huddled against the cockpit door. Why the door was closed is an unanswered question. The plane continued to burn for 4 hours before it could be put out. The National Transportation Safety Board investigated for 1 year the cause of the fire and crash on DC-3 N71Y. The cause was found to be a broken fuel line that fed the huge cabin heater. The fuel line had been replaced in Nebraska some 6 years earlier, and it was out of date and with cracks. It began spraying fuel, running down the inside belly of the plane unseen. By the time the fuel caught fire, it was coming up from the floor all the way down through the cabin and cockpit. David Nelson, Ricky's brother, and their 71-year-old mother, Harriet, received the news of Ricky's death along with the rest of the nation, including the families of his fiancée and the Stone Canyon Band. Eric Hillard Nelson, Ricky, was buried at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, California, not far from his dad, Ozzie, who had died in 1975 at the age of 69 from liver cancer. Harriet Nelson passed away on October the 2nd, 1994, of congested heart failure, age 85. She's buried with Ozzie and Ricky. David Nelson died the 12th of January 2011, age 74, from colon cancer. He was cremated and his remains are buried at the Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles.